You and I?
I'm Sir Duncan the Tall.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. HBO just dropped a brand new preview and first look at Night of the Seven Kingdoms. They're going to be doing more this week at New York Comic Con, so of course I will do all the videos for it. We are back in Westeros twice next year. We will be getting 2 different Game of Thrones series during the year. Night of the Seven Kingdoms is supposed to premiere in January. We'll get an official premiere date in a couple days. I believe it'll be later in January. That's typically when stuff comes back, when it comes back in January. Right now, Streets are saying that they've already renewed it for Season 2 and Season 3, and they'll just shoot those back to back. We will see if they're able to release that on a yearly basis. But George R. R. Martin said that he's going to write more in the world. I don't know how quickly that's going to happen. Do not press him when you ask him how quickly he's going to write stuff. There are a number of details about how it's going to look different from previous Game of Thrones series, even from House of the Dragon, because House of the Dragon Season 3 will also be premiering sometime in June, probably middle of June, around the same time that Season 2 premiered. There are a couple very obvious, very visible differences from other Game of Thrones series that they talked about when they were previewing Night of the Seven Kingdoms, so we'll just break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. It is going to be fun to go back to Westeros. Been a little while since House of the Dragon Season 2, and I think we'd always hoped that they'd eventually get to the point where they could do 2 Game of Thrones series in the same year. It was just a question of how long it would take them to get to that point. One of the new first looks that they revealed here looks like it's Dunk on his way to the inn, on the way to the tourney at Ashford, like he's on the road. And notice you do not see Egg with him, Aegon the Fifth Targaryen, so he has not met him yet. That's why I think he hasn't reached the actual inn yet, like this is the very beginning of the series. Dunk's real name is Duncan the Tall, eventually becoming Sir Duncan the Tall, as he grew up in Flea Bottom, not really knowing who his parents were. There's a lot of questions about his parentage, but Sir Arlen Pennytree took him on as his squire when he was a child and basically raised him as a surrogate father. Sir Arlen Pennytree was a hedge knight who would just go around to different tourneys, competing in them for fun, for money as well, because you earn a lot of money if you won tournaments. But part of the problem is that Sir Arlen was a very old man in a very, very lowly level knight. Like, hedge knights are actually very low on the totem pole. When the actual story picks up, the Hedge Knight, which is what Season 1 is going to be based on, it's basically going to cover the entirety of the Hedge Knight story in the books. They're on the road to the next tournament that Sir Arlen wants to compete at, the tourney at Ashford, but because of his advanced age and because of the rigors of actually competing in tournaments, he dies on the road. So part of the idea in this first look image is that he's taking his horse, Sir Arlen's horse, with him to the inn on the way to the tourney at Ashford after he's buried him on the roadside, and then pretends to be a knight himself to enter the tournament, because you have to be a knight in order to enter the tournament. Anybody can't just walk in and say, I want to compete in the tournament.
Sir Duncan the Tall. 4 pages for Sir Duncan. He must have been quite a man.
So they say.
There's a lot of conjecture and theories about whether or not Sir Arlen actually knighted Dunk before he actually passed away, like with his dying breath. Based on what George R. R. Martin wrote, most people actually believe that Sir Duncan was never actually fully knighted and just lied about it, and then people just eventually went along with it and stopped questioning it. If you remember Heath Ledger's A Knight's Tale story, the actual circumstances for Dunk joining the tourney at Ashford and becoming a knight are very similar to that, where he's squired to a knight who dies on the side of the road, then takes his armor, pretends to be a knight to enter the tournament. Speaking of which, we make all the Knight's Tale references. You remember Mark Addy actually starred in that before he starred in the original Game of Thrones series as Robert Baratheon. There's a little bit of footage where you actually see Egg next to the campfire here. Part of the idea is that on the way to the tournament, he stops at an inn briefly and gives his horses to a boy at the stables. The boy winds up being Egg, Aegon the Fifth Targaryen. Without really knowing Sir Duncan's actual circumstances, what's really going on, the boy, just very excited, asks to become his squire. Sir Duncan eventually agrees, and then eventually learns the truth of his parentage. When they first meet, the boy, Egg, doesn't tell Sir Duncan who he actually is. A couple of the big WTF moments that the show will be covering in Season 1 are the trial by 7, probably going to be like the big WTF battle that we see, because that's like the big thing that happens to Dunk while he's there. While he's at the tournament, he winds up meeting a girl named Tanzelle, who's called Tanzelle Too Tall, because like Sir Duncan the Tall, she's also extremely tall. They're meant to be the predecessors of Brienne of Tarth. She comes from their line. She's another member of the small folk who's a puppeteer and has come to work at the tournament. She winds up being attacked by one of Aegon's older brothers, Aerion Brightflame, who's just this very, very vicious Targaryen prince. If you thought that Daemon Targaryen was capricious and hardcore, Aerion Brightflame is way, way worse. In protecting her, he winds up striking Aerion, and it's a crime to actually strike one of the crown princes. Dunk then gets in trouble with their father, Maekar I, who's also still a prince. He hasn't ascended to the throne yet. Then winds up using the trial by 7 to actually try and get himself out of the situation. Otherwise, he's basically going to be locked up forever or killed. We don't need to get too deep into the actual trial by 7. There's a lot that actually happens during that. It's probably going to encompass an entire episode or multiple episodes. As part of this, he also learns Aegon's true parentage, that he is one of the Targaryen princes, but he's very low on the totem pole. He's Aegon V, like he's the youngest child in that family.
Aeg, Mother's looking for you. Aeg, I dreamed that I was old.
Maester Aemond during the original main series on his deathbed was remembering a childhood memory. The Aeg that he spoke of is this Aeg. He is actually Aegon V's older brother. He was actually in line for the Iron Throne at one time, but during the events of this series, he's actually studying to be a maester at the Citadel. So there's actually a pretty solid chance that we might actually see him at some point during this series, but he's actually not here at the tourney at Ashford during the events of Season 1. So if we do see a young Maester Aemond, it'd have to be like a cut to during a different part of Westeros. Probably the other biggest character just in terms of connecting the timeline of all the different shows is the Blood Raven, aka the Three-Eyed Raven, the younger version of Brynden Rivers before he has become the Three-Eyed Raven, before he's gone to the Wall even. Just like the younger version of Aemond, he is also not here at the tourney at Ashford when this is happening during the events of Season 1. So if we see younger Brynden Rivers, Three-Eyed Raven, it'll be during some other part in Westeros that they cut to. But essentially this Season 1 is meant to introduce you to the characters and start to develop the friendship between Aeg and Sir Duncan the Tall. They become best of friends as eventually he becomes Aeg's protector. Many, many years later, Aegon V eventually does ascend the Iron Throne and names Sir Duncan the Tall the Lord Commander of his Kingsguard at the time. Now remember, this is the same Aegon V that was actually killed during the tragedy at Summerhall, so there's lots of things in store for his eventual future way down the road, but this series probably will not cover any of that. If we actually see him ascend the Iron Throne or Sir Duncan the Tall eventually become Lord Commander, it would be like a post-credit scene or like a tag scene at the very end of the final season, whatever that winds up being. There are currently only 3 novellas in the Duncan Egg series that they're adapting for this, so at least 3 seasons. George R. Martin has claimed that he will write more as part of this, so eventually there'll be a 4th, but who knows when that's going to happen. When he says he's going to write something, you have no idea when that's going to get released. Everybody who's still waiting for Winds of Winter knows that. But in the new preview that HBO released, they also revealed a bunch of information about how the series is going to feel different from other Game of Thrones series like House of the Dragon or the original main series. So they write, viewers will notice something different right off the bat that distinguishes Night of the Seven Kingdoms from the other 2 Game of Thrones series we've seen thus far. There is no opening titles sequence. That is right. Probably one of the biggest calling cards of the other shows so far is their special intro sequences. They're like a real big production. It has been such a big deal in the past that they went so far to completely change the House of the Dragon intro between Season 1 and Season 2 to make it way more easy to actually see. That was like the big complaint apparently that regular casual viewers had for the Season 1 intro, is that it was too confusing and too dark. Personally, I was totally fine with that Season 1 intro, didn't have any issues picking stuff out. It was actually a lot of fun to try and go through all the different Easter eggs. I actually covered all the different Easter eggs and what all the different changes week to week with the intro meant during my Season 1 House of the Dragon videos, so you can watch those to actually learn how the intro changed week to week, and then in Season 2, why they changed it and how it wound up changing. They go on to say, instead of a sprawling piece of animation with thrumming orchestral soundtrack, the latest Westeros set spinoff includes a simple title card with medieval typography in between the beginning action of each episode. So boom, title screen, onto the episode. Remember I said they're only supposed to be about 30 minutes long instead of an hour long or more in some cases with House of the Dragon in the original main series episodes. HBO said it's meant to be a clear signal to audiences that they're about to experience something different than what they're used to, and it's on par with George R. R. Martin's Dunk and Egg novellas on which it's based. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms doesn't have a massive scale of, say, House of the Dragon. This is more of a snackable, character-driven story set in the world of Game of Thrones. All decisions came down to Dunk trying to channel the type of person he is into every aspect of this show, even the title sequence, the showrunner says. But one of the big differences, if you couldn't tell, is that the series is mostly set on the small folk as opposed to the Targaryen family themselves, like the royal family or the highborn people like we had with the original Game of Thrones main series. And like I said, part of the legend is people believing that Sir Duncan actually knighted himself. HBO actually goes out here in their preview and says the quiet part loud, where they say, Sir Arlen the Pennytree dies and Dunk knights himself. Like literally they're actually saying it for true. He actually knighted himself, so he was lying about being a knight the whole time. When HBO says that Dunk sets in motion certain events that will have ripple effects for the larger world in Westeros, it's talking about the line of succession because of what happens at the tourney at Ashford Meadow. There are many WTF things that happen at the tourney at Ashford Meadow during Season 1 that cause massive changes to the line of succession. HBO talks a little bit about this series after the events of House of the Dragon because the Dance of the Dragons is what they're mostly covering during that. This is meant to be set about 80 years after the events of the Dance of the Dragons, which are what we're seeing during House of the Dragon Season 3 and the eventual Season 4. It is also meant to be set 50 years after the death of the last dragon, which is a huge deal.
When the last dragon died, it was only a matter of time before the Targaryens followed.
And it is also meant to take place directly after the Blackfire Rebellion. So part of the idea is that you're seeing the realm in the recovery mode after a giant civil war, another civil war after just having the House of the Dragons dance the dragons. New York Comic Con is happening this weekend, so Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, there should be a lot of big stuff dropping every single day. There's a bunch of other episodes happening too, unrelated to Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon stuff. Just feels really good to be able to talk about brand new Game of Thrones related stuff. Starting to feel like the old days when you have Game of Thrones on all year long. We will see if they drop any more information about the other prequels or the other sequels like the Aegon the Conqueror series. Probably going to be a couple years before we see any actual footage from that. It sounds like they're not planning to premiere it till well after House of the Dragon is done, and maybe even towards the end of this Knight of the Seven Kingdoms series. Everybody rush out to start grabbing your swords and shields. This is also a good reminder that I need to buy a couple more Game of Thrones swords and some more shirts for this series. Everybody click here for the full teaser trailer. I'll update the link as soon as I post that later this week, and click here for all my other House of the Dragon videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.